Hello and welcome to Demiplanar with B. Dave Walters. Today I have the man, the myth, the legend, the Mark Hulmes.
Thank you. Very kind. Also, nailing the name pronunciation. Thank you very much. I
See,
mean, we've done a lot together, so I was glad that you got it, but it's a funny one. So
hey, I listen and I care. That's
well,
what I can get it out there. You know,
thanks, man.
you're
Thanks.
you're right. We have done a lot together, but it's been a minute. It's been a minute. You
It
know,
has. Like, I feel like, yeah, with everything that's going on, like, no traveling, because like that was the thing is we often got to meet up doing stuff, in the US, like for D&D and things like that.
hmm
And yeah, not being able to do that, we've not been able to sort of like catch up and caught up. But yeah, I was thinking about this, like getting ready to come in and chat, and it's just, yeah, we've like, I feel like we've both kind of like grown up into the kind of sphere a little bit, kind of like taken that rise. So it's been awesome.
but I've just been trying to catch up to you this whole time, man. Because that you
Shut up.
you were already no, you were about. Let me see. No, High Rollers.
Uh-huh.
I think you were midway through campaign one when I met you. I think you're
Yes,
midway
I
through
think so.
campaign one. Yeah.
Yeah. It was around about then. So yeah. So yeah, we'd been like that was still like when we were still just figuring stuff out, like we thought that high rollers was going to be a thing we'd do for like 2-3 months and then nobody would be interested and we'd stop doing it. Like half the team had never been streamers before, they'd never made content like that before. So we just thought, oh, this isn't gonna last. And then yeah, like by the time we met you, that was the point where I think we were like, oh, this is kind of a thing now. Like we kind of have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so it became this whole thing.
Apparently, people are into this. So
Yeah,
let me ask you this, because
sure.
whenever I have my wonderful guests on here,
Mm,
I always like to start with a philosophical softball. Um, what in your mind
mm.
makes a good story?
Oh goodness me, that's a big one as well.
It's not like it hasn't been discussed for 5,000 years. You know what I mean? So it's yeah.
But it's
I'm
so
like,
pers.
go ahead and knock that one out for us
Yeah,
real
I'll
quick.
just serve it up. Bam, let's go. I'll knock it out of the park. No, it's so tough because it's so varied, right? Like
Mhm.
different people, different groups, different cultures. Like that's the other thing is like in the UK versus like in the US, like these things can have such different meanings. I think it's something where I think for me, maybe this isn't the right term. I'm trying to think now. Maybe it's not necessarily a good story, but for me, when I finish like a game of D&D or like I finish a book or something like that, if I close that page or I walk away from that table and it leaves me with that a couple of feelings, as long as I can walk away with that feeling of like, man, I want more of this. Like I want to see more of this world. I want to know what's going to happen to these characters. I want to see how they're going to deal with a situation, mixed in with that, just that kind of like, I had such a good time. Like, when you see a good movie and you leave the
Mhm.
theater and it's all you want to talk about because it got you excited and you've got feelings, whether good or bad,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. I feel, that to me is like, that's when I feel like that was a good story, when I have that kind of euphoria from it.
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper then.
Yeah.
What elements in a story is it that you think give you that euphoria? What is it that gets that reaction?
Yeah, I think it's you have to be connected to what's happening. If you don't
Mhm.
have that connection, whether
Mhm.
that's to the characters or the world, if it doesn't interest you, if it doesn't intrigue you, if it doesn't leave you with that kind of like I care about this thing, I think you can't have that euphoria because you don't have that connection to it. If you watch a movie or read a book and you're like this was fun, like there was fun things that happened, but I didn't really care about any of it. I'm not connected to it. I don't have any emotional investment to it, then
Mhm.
you're not going to have that same level of euphoria, of that same level of need and desire to experience and see more. And I think that looking at like the kind of rise of the D&D show and the Twitch stream and things like that, I think that's very evident because I think what separates the D&D stuff to like a lot of other media is our audiences get so invested. They
Mhm.
care about these characters. They care about the world. They want to see them succeed or they want to see them fail. And that's what kind of creates that connection. And then that leads to that desire of like, I need to know what happens. I need to see what else is going to happen. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it's that core connection. And I think to get that connection, the characters have to be relatable. They have to have elements of humanity to them, like things that we can connect ourselves to. And the world has to have something which is, yeah, interesting or like sparks that curiosity, I think. So,
Yeah, the speech I'm always giving, and friends of this show have heard me say many times, is when when in this medium, when it is done well,
Mm,
the viewer should feel like they're at the table playing a game with their friends.
yes. Yeah.
You know,
That's like my favorite thing whenever
yeah.
people say stuff like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now let me to go more specific. So
Hmm.
for people who are not aware of high rollers, you know, if somebody
Mm.
has just, you know, emerged from 1997, you know, they've just come out of the woods. They're like,
No, not
what's
at all.
what's this internet the kids are on about, you know? But if for anybody who's not heard of high rollers, you know,
Yeah,
give me the elevator pitch. Also,
our
you should
obscure
watch it. It's really incredible. You should watch it. Yeah.
Our obscure British D&D show. Yeah, obviously very few people have heard of it. That's obviously, you know, totally. No, joking aside, and my kind of enforced confidence of my own product, we don't do that very well in the UK. We don't tend to be very sort of confident with our own things.
That's why you need me, Mark, to be
this is it. You are such a good hype man for this. Like, I never feel more professional than when I hang out with you, because you're like, you're awesome. You need to just be more awesome. I'm like, okay,
just
yeah, I will.
Keep doing it. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so High Rollers is a live play D&D show. You kind of know the drill. You know what those are, I'm sure, if you're watching this. But we are in the UK. It is me and a few friends of mine, some of whom are sort of YouTube or came from YouTube and Twitch streaming. Others weren't. They were kind of brought in. We've been going for about 5 years now. We actually started just shortly after Critical Role got started. Very big inspirations from us. You know, I've known Matt for a very long time, and that was like a big inspiration for our show. And we are currently in our second big D&D campaign. So our first D&D campaign, we played through that, and now we're on our second campaign, which is in the high levels. We're about level 16 at the moment, and it's a kind of mixture of sci-fi, fantasy, lots of Final Fantasy references, if you know that, some Star Wars, kind of turning the planar universe more into like a space kind of theme, where the planes are different planets, and they're all protecting their homeworld of Erois, which is currently under threat by a big evil sort of planar empire, and they're doing all sorts of crazy high-level stuff at the moment. And yeah, we've been doing that. That campaign's been going for about 3 years on its own now. It's up to quite a lot, very heavily invested, lots of ups and downs, big emotional moments. And I think that like the elevator pitch is kind of, for me, is you know, the thing that we try and convey is it's got that kind of classic British kind of like, there's a lot of kind of humor, but we do make fun of ourselves a lot. You know, there's a lot of sort of, it feels like a home game. It's kind of got that real sort of, you know, everybody's just making fun of each other, having a laugh. You know, we try and be professional to a certain level, but not so professional that people, you know, are kind of put off by it or it's intimidating. We try and make it feel very relaxed and casual. And yeah, we have a really good time with it. So you should come and check it out. I'm terrible at pitching my own show, but
no, you just did it. I appreciate that, you know, a not insignificant portion of the audience is screaming at me like, who hasn't heard of High Rollers? I'm just saying, I'm just giving the pitch, y'all.
You'd be surprised, man. Like it's one of those things we've noticed. Like, you know, we've tried to get out there and stuff like that, but you know, at the end of the day, the time zone thing does make a big difference, and there's a lot of people who haven't heard it. So this is a great opportunity. If you would like to come and give us a watch, please do, because I'd love for more people to check it out.
Because at one point it was Yogscast. I know if somebody's like, I want to go get neck deep in High Rollers, where can they find it?
Yeah, maybe mention where people can actually watch it, Mark. That'd be a good idea.
That's what I'm telling you, keeping me here for these assists.
This is great. Like, this is it. I love it. Yeah, so we have our own Twitch channel. So we are kind of part of the Yogscast network. If you know the Yogscast YouTube channel, we are part of their network, but we're not sort of associated in that strong sense as much. You know, we kind of work with them for things like art and merchandise and things like that. But we are our own channel. We are our own business. And you can find us at High Rollers DND pretty much everywhere on the internet: YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, podcasts, Instagram. You know, you can listen to us on Spotify or whatever other, you know, podcast program you use. YouTube, we've got every episode, all of our one shots, all of our mini series that we've done. We've done a lot of D&D stuff over 5 years. Even if you don't want to watch a big sort of 3-year long campaign, we've got like a 40 episode Curse of Strahd campaign that you can jump into and watch through. We've got like 12 episode mini series of little micro campaigns we've done. Or you can join us every Sunday at 5 p.m. UK time, which I think is 9 a.m. Pacific. And that's on twitch.tv/High Rollers DND. Bam.
There was boom. But now I'm going to twist it up even more. Knights of Evenstar. Because where people might recognize you, people that are
Yeah.
watching this show, is
Yeah.
WotC puts Knights of Evenstar and Black Dice Society back to back a lot of times. And maybe I've been angling for a crossover episode. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but maybe I've sent a number of emails to Anna. Maybe.
Oh, I see. Okay. You know, Knights of Evening Star is really interesting because with High Rollers, you know, I was like there from the beginning, like sort of not the creator of it, but like one of the people kind of getting it going. And I'm very involved in a lot of the stuff that we do. With Knights of Evening Star, it's kind of blessed because it's like Anna, beautiful, wonderful Anna, handles all of the administration stuff. So I just get to turn up and DM, which is great. I'm just like, I'm here to run the game. I run the game, and then that's kind of it for me. So that's great. But yeah, Knights of Evening Star is on the D&D, on the official D&D Twitch channel, like Media says, kind of, you know, ties in time-wise very closely with Black Dice Society, but it is basically a kingdom management campaign set in Cormyr. So if you know the Forgotten Realms, if you're a kind of, you know, old school Forgotten Realms player, you will know of Cormyr. If you're new to the Forgotten Realms, it's kind of not really talked about much in the books, and you don't get to see it much, but it's this kingdom of knights and wizards and nobility and very cool kind of history stuff going on, lots of rad stuff. And we're doing a kind of kingdom management game where the players, I've got a very excellent selection of players. You've got Anna Prosser, Nate Sharp, Jonathan Indovino, Shady Penguin, and Mika Burton. And they are basically running and building up a kingdom within Cormyr called Evening Star, which is like a small village that they started as. And that's been really fun. That's been a very different style of campaign to High Rollers and Erois that we've been doing. So that's been a ton of fun as well. And you can catch that on the official D&D channel when, I'm not sure. A bunch of episodes are already out, and hopefully a new season starting soon, but I don't have the exact start dates for that yet. So
yeah, I mean, I reject linear time and all the other lies of the before times. It's just stuff.
What is time?
Happens, you know? Yeah, we just do things. Yeah,
we just do things, man. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. So check that out as well. Again, it's fantastic content. You put out a lot of fantastic content. Why,
thanks, man? You too.
Thank you. What?
No, of course.
Are there any other games that even if you haven't streamed them that you play seriously besides D&D, or is D&D like mostly your jam?
It's one of those things where I'd love to play more systems, because I firmly believe that as a GM, as a DM, one of the best ways you can improve as a DM or GM is to play other game systems. If you just play D&D, that's great. You can learn all the rules of D&D, but actually if you try a different system, they might handle a specific type of content like exploration or social content in a different way that will give you an idea, or at least just kind of change your way of thinking about it. So I would love to play more systems. I buy books and read them all the time, but I don't get to play them as much. Yeah,
they're all over there. Yep.
Yeah, I've got a few back here, and then I've got more over there, and I've got a ton of stuff. But one system that I used to play, we used to do it as like an offline game. It was when I first moved to the city that I'm living in now, Bristol. When I first started working with some of the Yogscast guys, it was kind of how I got to know them, and I ran the Fantasy Flight Games Edge of the Empire Star Wars system.
Logged a lot of time in that game. Yep.
I love that game. Like, there is just something about those mechanics, and also the Genesis system, which they did sort of they took all the rules of the Star Wars system and then said, hey, here's a way that you can use this for any kind of setting you want. You could do fantasy, you could do modern day, you could do whatever, weird World War II or like steampunk or whatever. I love that system. You know, I know a lot of people don't like kind of proprietary dice and custom dice, but they made it in a way that it actually really works in that system to tell a really strong narrative.
The only way I forgave the dice was the app. The app was simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
$5
it
works out for you.
Okay, great. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Before that, it works really well.
Yeah.
Unlike this Muggins who went out and bought like 3 packets of the dice and has just a jar of dice which are useless for anything else. So
exactly.
But that's how I do. So but yeah, I love that system. I love the way that it blends, because for me, like, I love mechanics. I like this. I'm a big fan of like strong mechanics in games design. Like, I love doing boss monsters in Dungeons and Dragons that have like really kind of complicated and fun mechanics, but I also love more narrative systems, and that Star Wars system was a great blend of it, because it really kind of gave you the rails that you needed, but the players had options and they knew what they could do and everything else, and it just worked really well, and it creates a lot of really fun narrative situations. So
I'm going through this with the game design for Into the Motherlands now that we're doing our own
Mm,
system, because you always have to, the first question you got to ask is, what's the experience that this is supposed to approximate? Like
yeah.
what kind of things are you even attempting to facilitate? Because I give an example of something like Outbreak Undead is
Mm,
very, very crunchy, but it's trying to simulate the world, this world right now. And
yeah.
you think it's like, oh, if a zombie came through there, of course I'd grab this bowl and throw it at his head and jump through that window. And Outbreak is like, oh, would you? You think
Yeah.
so? Well, let's see. That's
Let's see.
improbable. Whereas D&D is, even though it has grown, it has never completely shook its graph paper war game roots of five
Hmm.
foot squares and 10-foot movements and things like that. Then
Yeah.
you have something like the World of Darkness, which I got to get you in on some vampire. I think you'd really like it.
Man, listen, like Jason and you and so many other people are like, you got to play this game. I bought the books. I'm like, this seems amazing. Like, that's the kind of game I want to play with, like, you and like my friends in the US, because like you guys are like really into the theater and the role playing stuff. And those are the people I want to play vampire with, like people who are going to get into it,
I mean, we can make that happen, Mark.
We can listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I next over there, I will let you know, and we will figure something out. So,
yeah, man, absolutely. I was gonna say, I know people. I am people.
You
Yeah.
are people, dude.
It's it's this whole thing. I always talk to people. It's like it has all been wild, and it's all been comedically improbable that any of this happened. But I think you said something important that I think people overlook, that you guys have been doing this for 5 years now. Some of the people already had a background in the digital space. Some of the people, you saw something in and, gave them an opportunity and brought them up. But I think people, they see like the stuff you do and I do, and they think
Mm.
this just happened, and is like, no, it really didn't. Like, we've been at this a while now.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just the thing. Like I kind of talk about it a lot because I totally appreciate that I am in an incredibly fortunate position for this to be my job. Like, but I
Mhm,
worked like in an office for like 8 years. I was working social media and like accounting and
mhm,
office cubicle jobs for a long, long time.
mhm,
And I fully recognize what an amazing career I get to live now, like writing and doing this kind of stuff for a living. But I talk about this, and it's something I've really had to drill into myself. But I feel like the position I'm in now in my life is all those years of playing D&D as both a kid
mhm,
and a young man, and developing those skills as a
mhm,
GM and practicing. And my training as an actor, I wanted to go to drama school. I wanted to be I was a theater kid. That all kind of came along. And then
mhm,
it also met an opportunity that I made for myself by putting myself out there and meeting people and social network, networking and connecting. And these
mhm,
two things met, and that created the opportunity for High Rollers, for me to be in the position I am now. And yeah, it's not just like even the work of the 5 years for High Rollers. It's the 15, 20 years of me running games for my friends at home that helped me develop those skills. It was the improv lessons that I took as part of training to be an actor. It's, all of that stuff beforehand now is still being used in this today. And I think that that's 100% why it's kind of become a bit of a success. So,
Yep.
yeah.
It all comes together, and it all takes time. Because I'm always telling people, if you want to do this, do it. Get your
Mm,
friends together, get a microphone, turn on a camera, make some content. You're gonna be awful at it. Get better and continue growing. Because I think people
yeah.
get a false positive that when they can't do the kind of stuff we do immediately, they're like, well, then I failed. And it's like, no,
It's like, no.
a few years ago I couldn't do it either. God willing, a few years from now I'll be like, oh, I'm better than that.
Yeah.
It's a sliding scale. It's just, but I think it does take, like you were just saying though, I think you have to be conscious of the fact that you are attempting to improve, because
Hmm.
repetition is not practice. You know,
Yeah.
just
You have
doing
to grow.
exactly, just
Yeah.
doing a thing does not innately make you better at that thing.
A
Some
100%.
consciousness of what it is that you're trying to achieve is uh as important, if it, than anything.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Like, I think that, like, if you, when you know, for me, it was like growing up when I would run games for my friends, like, you know, after every sort of session, it would be like, what could I do better next time?
Hmm.
How can I improve? Oh, you know, and I remember watching, you know, listening to the first Ack Inc. podcast with Perkins and the Penny Arcade guys, and listening to Chris and be like, man, I've never seen another GM run a game like this. And I love the way that he did that. And I love the way he did that. I want to do that. And then it's looking at other RPG systems. Oh, it's really interesting how in this system they actually focus more on this stuff and this stuff. Maybe I could do more of that stuff in my games. And oh, my player really like this and this player really like that. Let's try and mix these two things together. And it was constantly asking those questions of what can I do better? How can I grow? How can I do things differently? And yeah, 100%. That's one thing I think not enough people say is, like you said, like just doing a thing over and over again is not the same thing as improving, you know, 100%.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. If you keep seeing me turning over here, I got my list of questions over here, so I'm not just not just on Instagram. Let me lay one of these on you, actually, because these
Sure.
are we got a lot of good ones. I mean, there's always the ones you can't answer. It never fails. Every week, people are like, you know, when's this show starting? You know, are you gonna kill this character? It's like, come
I
on, y'all.
can't tell you that.
They
Come
can't-
on, y'all.
They can't say. Yeah, but these we got some good ones. So this is
Nice.
from Obo Lauren. Shout out to Obo Lauren.
Oh, Lauren.
What one new skill, trick, or technique that you've had to adopt to play TTRPGs online that you're excited to be able to bring to your in-person games?
I think one thing that I didn't really pick up on before, I think things like pacing is like a big one. Like, because when you're running a game for like a stream, you have to be conscious of like, well, you know, yes, and I've always had the mentality of when I run my games for High Rollers or Knights of Evening Star, I run it as close to how I would run it in person or like off stream as I would. I want it to feel very natural. I want it to be like, if you play with me in private, that's the same type of game as you're going to get when you're on stream. But I think that one thing that I've become kind of subconsciously aware of is, you know, you become aware of like, well, if you're going to be doing a show for like 3 years long, you need to like have an idea of pacing for things like arcs, and you begin to get in a sense of like, okay, the players are kind of getting a little bit bored of this now. I need to kind of freshen things up, and maybe we need to kind of jumpstart things and stuff like that. And I think that when we play as a teenager, like when I was playing as a young man after school, or when I was like, you know, in an office job playing with my colleagues there, that stuff didn't matter as much because we were just happy to be playing. Like it was just,
Yep.
You know, we'll play and we'll go through the 20 level mega dungeon that's just room after room of monsters because we were just happy to play. Whereas now I think I'm a lot more conscious of like, well, is that the best experience I can be providing, or can I kind of throw things in there? Can I take things from the players' ideas and stories and throw that in to kind of keep the pacing fresh and stuff like that? But yeah, I don't know if there's like a more specific skill than that. It's like such a hard, you know, quite sometimes difficult to come up with stuff on the spot. So
yeah, it's, you know, I tell people, because I'm the same way. The home game for me and the stream game is the same. I think the difference for me, the difference between a home game and a stream game is a home game is a social activity. The fact that you get together, that you share a meal, that you talk about, have you seen Eternals yet? You know, that you complain about your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you know, and eventually you roll some dice, and that's all a part of it. The streaming cuts all of that stuff out. Like it is just lean. But I often encourage people, when you're running your home game, still look at it in terms of pacing, in terms of doing something that is going to be of value. Because if I tell people, if you're having trouble booking your group, it's because there is not an experience that is worth them taking time out of their life to have. You know? And I don't mean, you know, stuff happens. Sometimes you can't get a babysitter or whatever. I mean, that happens.
Sure.
But, you know, the cliche of, oh, we can never get the group together. I'm like, I can tell you why you never get the group together. Because, I mean, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah. And it ties into something I've been talking a lot with my buddy Matt Colville recently. He's been talking a lot about this in his streams, and we've been talking about it in Discord and on Twitter and stuff. And I think that like partially some of that can also be tied to like, you know, well, why are those players? What is it about the game that they're interested in? Because it sounds like they're not getting enough of that thing. Like if that player wants to turn up because they want to level up and they want to get magic items and they want to, you know, feel powerful and strong, maybe they're not getting enough of that. Or like if they're turning up because they want the kind of like really cool, interesting narrative with the NPCs and things like that. You know, if they were getting what they wanted, they would be like, when can we play next? They wouldn't be like, oh, you know, I can't do Friday, I can't do Sunday. They'd be like, listen, I'm free these days. When can we play next? I want to play. I want to play. Like, if you were giving them what they wanted, if they felt rewarded and they felt engaged by it, they will make the time to do it. And like you said, obviously there are definitely things where, like, you know, people who are working jobs where their shifts are constantly changing, or they can't get babysitters, they got kids, you know, obviously all that stuff changes. But like, sit down and talk with the players. This is one thing I don't think GMs do nowhere near enough. You see all these horror stories and advice threads on Reddit of people kind of like talking about things, and I swear 90% of these problems are like, sit down and talk as adults and be like, listen, like, what's the problem? Why are you acting like this? Or why are you giving this player so much trouble? Why can't we get a game together? Are you guys not having fun? What can I be doing to fix it? What can you be doing to make this better for them? Like, you just gotta have these conversations. Like, that's the thing.
And don't let things just like bubble up unsaid. It's, you know, I mean, on a macro level, you know, not every player's for every table, and not every table's for every player. I don't think people have trouble admitting that to themselves. But also, as the person running the game, you also have to understand that everybody has to have a chance to shine. You know, the talky person has to have a chance to talk. The sneaky person has to have a chance to sneak. You know, the fighty person has to have a chance to fight. Like, everybody gets to appeal to their strengths, because I think this medium in particular, especially for newer people, is living out that fantasy of your idealized self. You know what I mean? That is, especially, I run into this the most in Vampire, because Vampire is this world. So there's no the layer of which, you know, with D&D, which is obviously a game we love. You know, you have to, you know, well, now I got to remember what an elf is, and I got to remember what a paladin is, and I got to remember what Waterdeep is. You know what I mean? And then and those are gates that you have to pass through to get to like a real meaningful experience, which you can get there, but they're gates.
There's more work.
Exactly. Filters, you know? Vampire doesn't have that. You know, it's this world. You know, Bristol is Bristol. The shop on the corner is there. You know, the movie theater, it's there. It's just 30% of the people are monsters, and so are you. You know, so the speed with which you can actually access a real human emotion is much faster. So I always pay attention, you know, spoiler alerts, since I'm talking about getting you in for Vampire. When people pick their first character, they reveal more about themselves than
I can imagine
than they think they do, you know? But that's a beautiful thing. For sure. But where that becomes less beautiful is when, you know, to go with the D&D analogy, you know, that I chose a bugbear ranger because I wanted to be big and strong. I wanted to be, you know, this servant of the natural order. And then they're denied that. You know what I mean? It becomes, it can become, it can kind of fester, because it's more than just a disappointment that I actually thought I was going to get to be this, and now I'm not, and that can go really bad really quickly. So it's something to be very cognizant of.
And like, again, like, it's, you know, not always necessarily between the DM and that player. It can be like another player is denying that opportunity and is like, and that's where you've just got to have these conversations and be like, look, I came to this game because this is what I want to do. I appreciate that you want to do something else. Let's compromise. Let's find a way that we can both get what we want to have out of it. And the DM's job is to help make that happen. It's like, hey, DM, how can we make both of our wants come to fruition? I see it a lot. You hit like the really profound, like, emotional side of things. The other thing I see a lot is like, online, you see a lot of criticisms of people who are playing in a sort of more min-max kind of power gamer kind of combat focused way. And I'm like, no, that's okay. That is a fine way to play. And that's what's fun for that person. Like, some people want to build a really strong character who can overcome these challenges and feel strong and cool and badass and do all this stuff. And that's totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with a little, you know, with that, as long as it's not stealing the spotlight or it's ruining other people's fun. And that's where you've got to have those conversations. But it's kind of, you see a lot of people kind of put it down like, like, oh, well, that's just power gaming. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what that person does for fun. And like, that's what they're turning up to do. If you deny them that, I think it came up because we were talking, there was a thread where that Ginny posted, which was talking about sort of like things that players wish their DMs did. And it was this concept of like, if I build a cleric, let me face a horde of undead so I can destroy them all. Like, don't plan around my abilities or my strengths. Let me do cool stuff. And that then it kind of came into the topic of like, well, what if people are power gaming? And I'm like, yeah, they power gamed because they want to do cool stuff. Let them do cool stuff. Let them fight something single-handedly and win.
Yeah,
whatever it is. So there's this whole thing about it.
1,000%. But I mean, obviously, I think y'all know I very much min-max or power gamer person. That's who I am. But I also just spent many years of my life playing a bard, paladin, warlock, sorcerer. Made it work though. I made it work.
Made it work. But, yeah, of course.
But to me, the reason why I skew, obviously I've done my fair share down in the mud, drama, but the reason why I like more high power games and why level 20 is my niche is most people don't really get to feel powerful in life. But like every day we're beset by stuff that we wish we could change and we can't. Things we wish we could make a difference and we can't. And then when you're like, well, hey, look, you have the ability to make all the difference now. Then the story becomes, when high level play is less about what can you do and more about what should you do. The implications of your actions or inactions, because past a certain point, everybody can do everything. But this idea that is somehow contrary to a valid and fulfilling experience. I'm like, no, y'all, like, no.
Yeah.
I do realize I did answer Lauren's question. I think the number one thing that I took from this time that I don't unfortunately think we can transport is, with the heads and boxes that we've been having to do for this last 18 months or so, I've been able to assemble cast that never would have happened otherwise, like Knights of Evenstar, Black Dice Society. Like, our shows would not exist as they are right now if we all had to be in a room week to week. So I don't know if that means continuing in this format, even as like studios are coming back up again, validly trying to bring in just the one person digital, which I haven't seen done well yet. I've seen people try, but it's like,
it's hard to do, isn't it? I think that those skills are still going to be useful, because I still want to do games with people, like, because especially for me, like, so many of my friends in the US, I won't ever get to play with them on a regular basis. So for me, being able to keep playing digitally, and I've learned so much more about how to use VTTs, how to like have good audio, how to kind of like deal with that lag delay. Like, you pick up on all these little nuances over the last few years that makes online play better. When we started, it was awkward because it's like everybody's dealing with this new framework and like, oh, how do I use this, app or program, or like, oh, I'm speaking over, you got, and you have all this. Whereas now we've got over that now, and I think moving forward, those skills are still going to be useful, because I still want to do games, digitally. I'm very glad to be going back to playing in person. Don't get me wrong, I've missed it so much. But being able to keep up playing digitally is going to be very useful for sure.
Next one here from Gamer Mama Cadence, who I just met at Gamehole Con. Hello.
Nice.
What have you learned about being a DM, and what have you learned about being a DM, and what was the most that is the best idea? How have I never thought of doing that before moment, but I'm definitely using that now that you've gotten from playing, from watching or playing with other DMs. So I guess your biggest takeaway from somebody else, I think I'm going to paraphrase that question.
I think and this is something that I've learned from a lot of different GMs watching it, whether it's, lots like yourself or Jason or Chris or Jerry and stuff like that. One thing I never used to do, which I love to do now, is when a player asks me like, oh, well, do I know anything about so-and-so or this town? And it's that thing of like, I don't know. Do you? You tell me, what do you know about this place? And they're like, oh, but I don't know anything. I'm like, well, you make up something. Like, what's a cool holiday? Or like, you tell me something about the town. and like watching their eyes light up for the first time, and they're like, yeah, there's a thing, or like there's an opportunity for them to say like, well, in my backstory I had this like guy that I knew, like maybe they live here, and I'm like, cool, yeah, tell me about them. And like you build onto that, like that's a real special feeling, and it definitely changed things for my players when they realized that they had the power to kind of shape that as well. Like it wasn't, just the DM story, it was something that they could interact with and involve with as well. I love that.
Yeah, it's a collaborative art. It's a story that we're telling together, and I 100% agree with you. Every time you're like, you tell me what this thing is like. You open the door and it's filthy. Tell me what it looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seeing their wheels start turning, it does hook them into what is going on so much stronger that way.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I got best from someone else is Jason would give us player briefings ahead of LA by Night. He does it in much greater detail than I do, but he would tell us things like, someone is gonna come talk to you. Let them finish before you attack them. Like he would have to say stuff like that to us.
I love that though. Like as a player, like that's so good to know, because otherwise I'd be like, am I supposed to attack this guy? Like, like you're gonna freak out about
like, blam, yeah, right. It's like don't let him speak; he'll bewitch us. Yeah, but being able to, but now I do that with my streams. So with Black Dice Society, I'll give them things like, hey, this is going to be a more dramatic episode. If you want your character moments, find them this week, because next week is going to be a bit of a meat grinder and you're not going to have a chance, Or I'll be like, do go towards the mountains, don't go towards the ocean. Because it helps, it saves you from chewing up a lot of screen time. And also it helps reduce confusion amongst the group when, maybe it's not clear, am I supposed to go to the mountains or the forest? And then not everybody's rowing the same direction,
Yeah, because like I think as well, like especially with certain types of game, like if you are used to playing a sandbox open game where you can decide everything, like that's fine. Like most players who know that that's the campaign they're going into won't worry so much about where they go or what they do. But I've certainly found that some groups love to have, and I think that a lot of people will be like, that's railroading, you shouldn't do it. And it's like, well, but the players want, like, they want a little bit of guidance. They want to say, oh, well, maybe you should go here. Like, that would be a cool thing if you went to this place. Yeah. The players are like, yep, let's do that then. I want to go there and see what's going to happen. Yeah. Like, that's totally fine.
It's that people get paralysis by analysis. They do. That it's like too many options is not good. And here's the reality. If it's clear we're heading towards Mount Doom.
Yeah.
Big old black volcano. It's right over there. We're heading towards Mount Doom. And on the way to Mount Doom, you're like, well, but wait a second. There's this delightful goblin village. We want to check it out. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we're going to the goblin village. No problem.
Yeah.
Just understand Mount Doom's right over there.
Still there. Yeah. Oh, it looks a little bit more fiery. You come out the goblin village like, oh, it's definitely looking a bit more fiery now that you've taken that delay.
It's almost like the forces of darkness are growing more powerful. I don't know. That's probably not a thing. Yeah. So this is one from S.K. Berghoff. There are many great DMs, but Mark Hulmes is the best. They capitalized. The best and incredibly memorable NPCs and the most hauntingly beautiful / tense visions or dreams. How do you prepare both of these aspects for your games? For example, Root Prime, the NPC, and his vision quest for Sentry. Look at that. You got an OG. He's digging back into the archives.
That is, thank you for that. And I do, I very much appreciate the compliments, and I know this is very British, but I have learned from a lot of GMs. Like I am not the biggest or greatest or anything like that. We all have our talents and special techniques, but I'm glad that people enjoy what I do. And NPCs and the kind of vision quest stuff is probably my favorite thing as a DM. Like NPCs are 100% my favorite thing as a DM. I think that they are the thing that I'm kind of probably the best at. I'm not the best at creating dungeons. I'm probably not the best at sort of like the big epic world building character stuff, but NPCs, creating like fun NPCs that the players care about, I think I'm pretty good at that. And the visions quest thing, like visions and dreams and prophecies, I think is such a powerful tool for a GM. Like there is nothing that gets my table to just snap their like attention, like deers in headlights, when it's like, right, you guys take a long rest. Tom, you begin to dream. And like, they will all be like, like waiting for it to happen because they know, because I've set this up with them, that it's going to mean something. They might not understand it. They might not really realize what it's about, but they know it means something that's important. And so they pay attention and then they think about it and they're like, what if it means this? Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should go there. But also it's a great way to kind of bring in a lot of the character stuff that you know that a particular player like really resonates with. Like you can really connect with a certain character, or perhaps even the player themselves, like things that they care about and is important to them. Like that brings their attention to the forefront, because it goes back to what we were talking earlier about making that connection with somebody on a kind of on a deeper level. And I think visions and dreams and prophecies really, really tie into that. The sad truth about the preparation stuff is I don't really do a lot. Like I will just create an NPC and I will make an NPC that I'm like, I think this guy or this gal or this person is very cool. I hope that the players like them, and then I'll play them in the moment, and I'll, make up a voice and play their character as like I think, as I would if I was going to be on stage. And then sometimes the players are like, we love this character, we want to protect them, we want to take them with us on all of our adventures. And then sometimes the players are like, cool, nice to meet you, we're going to go over and do this other thing now. And I'm like, okay, yep. And you just push that NPC to the side. Even if you think they were cool, you're like, yep, put them over there and focus on the thing that they care about, and you just move on.
I found it is almost inversely proportional. Like the harder I try to make sure this is a thing, they will not care. But literally the awakened shrub that they just rolled on a random table and just popped up and started talking to them, they're going to love forever. I had a shrub named Herb recently. That's here we are, awakened shrub. There you go.
That's it.
That's I think now this is something that I'm about to shamelessly adopt from you, sir. Because in my vampire games, prophecy came up a lot, because there's a clan called the Malkavians. And one of the things they can do, I mean, other people can do it, but it's a Malkavian specialty, is they can see the future, but it's symbolic. So they would try and do this all the time. So I would have to, in the more successes they rolled, the more vivid the vision. And there was times I laid out entire narrative arcs, and they write it down, and they go and they try and unpack it later, and they come back and be like, that was that, and I'm like, it was, actually, like they're gonna start dreaming a lot more in the Black Dice Society. They're gonna start dreaming a lot more. Yes.
The cool thing as well, when you do with stuff like prophecies and things like that, and I'll admit this, like the amount of times I have given them a vision or a dream or a prophecy, and they're like, okay, they make all the notes, and then later on something will happen in the campaign, and they'll say things like, I think that this is connected to this, and in my head I'm like, well, it wasn't,
it is
but
now.
It is now.
It is now. Yep.
Yeah. Or they do things where later on they're like, was this part of this? Oh man, that's so clever. And I'm like, yeah, obviously it was.
Yeah. Thanks for
noticing.
On. Yeah. Right. That's so much so that like with Black Dice Society, a lot of this I really am planting seeds, and there really is a thing that is going on. And yes, absolutely, there's times that they were like, what if it was this thing that was so much better than what you thought it was? And I'm like, yeah, what if it was that? Yeah. Now, the last few times they've theory crafted about what happened, I took the headphones off because we have an after show. So I'm like, no, you guys say what you think is happening. You know what I mean? I'm all like,
because you don't want to be influenced.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I will just say a super quick thing that I'll do for NPCs that I find helpful, especially when you're trying to come up with a lot on the fly, is just make sure there's always an adjective for your NPCs. Your dwarvish barkeep is not just, he's an itchy dwarvish barkeep. He's scratching the whole time they're talking to him. You know what I mean? There's the agoraphobic kobold, that doesn't want to be out from, out under the open sky. Like
just something.
Those little things will like hook those people and make your group remember them for so much longer.
100%.
What this one's tough because I don't want to get into playing favorites, so hang on, I'm not gonna answer that. I don't think I'm going to ask you that one either.
I'll just, while we're going on,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope you're having a great time. I'll be Dave. Checks out the questions.
I got it. You know what? Hang on a second. Here, I'm gonna ask you one. I'm gonna ask you one here in Zoom, and you tell me if you want to talk about this or not. So hang on. Hopefully, I'm not about to break the overlay. I don't think I did. Hey, I didn't break everything.
You can ask. You can ask about that. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I don't mind talking about it, so it's fine.
Groovy. All right. Let me here. See, now I'm shuffling the deck though, so they won't know which question I was referring to. This is no, I'm definitely not gonna ask that one. All right. So let me ask you, what is your favorite aspect of world building?
I talk about this a lot because I love world building, as one day I definitely want to write fancy books. Like that's, a huge part of my childhood and still something I love to do today. And I think moving on from D&D, that's like my next step. But world building,
no los dos, my friend. Some of us live in multiple worlds. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it just all brings it together.
It can be done.
I think my favorite thing with world building is I consider it a process of building a spider's web out of questions. So it's like you start with, an idea of like, I'm going to have a magical apocalypse. And that's going to be the thing that kicks off this world, or like that change the status quo, that is going to be like a big part of my world's history. Okay, great. What was it? How did it happen? What did it affect? Did it create new resources? What are those resources? Are kingdoms fighting over those resources? You build this spider web out of questions that kind of builds on things and builds on things. Like, I'm going to have these two rival kingdoms that fight over this border. Why are they fighting? How have they fought in the past? What battles have they fought? Has that caused any changes of territory? And it can get quite complicated, but by asking yourself those questions, you come up with a lot of answers that add a lot of detail to the world. And to sit there and just ask myself those questions and think like, it's really cool that I'm going to have this nation that's ruled by a draconic nobility. What does that actually mean? How does that translate down into the world? Well, maybe they would have like kobolds as their servants who run their palaces. Maybe that means that like humans and elves, like longer lived races, actually have more respect because the dragons remember them for longer because they're living for longer. Humans, though, they generally remember the family names rather than the individuals. Oh, well, how would that affect this? And I love that stuff. I get really like in the spiral of it. So
no, that's fantastic. Also, if you really want to get into writing, we should talk about that, man. Like I said, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
I do a writing podcast. I teach a class. It is the tiniest adjustment to what you're already doing.
It's one of those things where like the hardest thing for me is the sitting down and doing it. Like,
True.
Like when I do it, that I get into it, and like I love writing, I love dialogue, especially I love writing characters. It's that process of like, right, get in, do the work.
Well, I got good news and I got bad news for you. The good news is everybody's got that problem. The bad news is everybody's got that problem.
There's no solution.
Yeah.
That's
you know what
it.
I mean?
We should definitely talk. Definitely talk.
It's I was just talking to Keith Baker about this. Because he was saying, when he was talking about why he chose to make Eberron relatively low power, relatively low magic, because he was saying, and we were talking exactly about the implications of some of these things, that he's like, okay, let's say you really live in a world where resurrection's possible. The life and death was no longer an obstacle. It's no longer, it is merely a setback, because we all know you reach a certain point in D&D where death really just kind of costs you the afternoon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where you're like 5,000 GP diamond in an afternoon, and then you're fine.
You're like, I'll get that dragon next time, But what he was saying is like, if that's really the world, then the people who control the world are not even the people with the resurrection magic. It's the people with the diamonds.
Yes.
Whoever's got the diamonds rules the world.
And it's because they control life and death. They literally control who can live forever.
In death. You know what I mean? So when you get in and start unpacking it to your exact point, that you're like, well, that would mean this, that would mean that. I think that's where things like Bright the Will Smith movie from a couple years ago. That's where it
Mm,
failed, where it's like, it's our world, but orcs. And I'm like, no, 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 no,
doesn't
no.
work.
Doesn't work. Unless your story is orcs show up today,
Yes.
it's not that. That ripple
Yeah.
effect would be so tremendous
Yep.
up until that point, that it's like, no, it's in you would have to stop and think all that through. Just being like,
Yeah, because it was very
yeah,
shallow. It was like they didn't, it's like you don't have the depth to it, and those questions are what add that depth.
yep,
Incidentally, Eberron, by the way, absolutely one of my favorite campaign settings, and
it's
I
great stuff.
really want to talk and meet Keith one day, because I've not spoken to him, and it's like,
Oh man,
Eberron is like my jam.
I'll shoot an introductory message
Yeah,
as soon as we get done here. I'll connect you with him. He's a great guy.
yeah, man,
Um,
love it.
all right. So here's here's an interesting one. Assuming I'm not about to
Sure,
choke to death. Hang on a second. Sorry,
that's right.
it's not the Rona. I promise. I'm tested frequently. Um, how much has D&D encouraged or facilitated your own exploration of gender?
Yeah, this is a big one, actually. So folks who don't know me, and I'm not saying you should,
You definitely should. I'm saying it. Follow this man, Sherlock.
if you weren't aware of me already, it's kind of become a thing that I've been sort of not known for, but I've been exploring over the last few years. It started a few years ago, when for sort of Halloween, we do a Halloween episode for High Rollers where we all dress up in costumes. And as a joke, I was like, haha, I'm going to be Bowsette, because Bowsette was a big meme at the time. And I was blown away by the amount of people, because up until that point, I'd done a lot of things like cosplay and costuming and theater, where, I would always play female characters, and I always shrouded it as it's a joke. I'm haha, isn't it funny? Like, I was very slender and very sort of like, a bit androgynous in my bit more androgynous in my appearance when I was younger. And so it'd be like, isn't it funny? I look, it's really funny, isn't it? And it was an armor. It was like a complete shield. And then when I started doing stuff for High Rollers, where I would do these streams, people were responding really well to it. They were like, you look amazing. Like, oh my God, I can't believe how good you look. And that was like a really positive thing. And it got me thinking, my entire life in Dungeons and Dragons, I have played female and male characters, and it's never been a thing that I've even questioned. It's just like, yep, like playing a female character is no different to playing a male character to me. And even when I did my guest spot on Critical Role, I wanted, and I said to Matt, is it okay if I play a female character? Like, it's something that I really like to do, and it helps me feel really connected to the character. And obviously Matt was like, of course you can, amazing, do it, whatever. And over the last few years, the more NPCs I've played, the more characters I've played, and the more stuff I've done, it's really helped me kind of realize, well, okay, I grew up in a time where, if, a guy dressed up as a woman, that was weird and creepy and blah, blah, blah. It was like a weird sexual thing. Like, that was something I was taught when I was growing up and when I was younger. And so when I would play a female character in D&D, again, it was that kind of thing of like, oh, I'm doing it like, oh, it's fine. It's just a bit of a joke, haha. But actually, now that I look back on it, I kind of have realized that I am definitely in a strange place where it's almost like a kind of gender fluid, bi-gendered thing of like, I have like my male persona, and I channel that into my male characters all the time. And I love to play kind of like the rough and easy kind of rogue, and playing like a London street man and stuff like that. I love playing those kind of characters. Equally, I love playing super feminine NPCs and characters like Kaliana and NPCs in my Eros campaign. And like, I feel just as comfortable playing those characters as I do the male ones. And so I think D&D and RPGs especially, and it's interesting you were talking about vampire and how somebody's first vampire character would be a huge reflection of like, it would tell you a lot about them. Because like, my first immediate thought would be like, I would want to play a character who had changed their gender magically, who had found some way to like,
that's the thing.
Yeah. Like, that is 100% the character I would want to represent. I would want to play a character who changed their gender magically and is now kind of discovering the world in this new gender kind of thing. Like 100%, that's what I would want to play. Because that's something I couldn't do in the real world. Like, I can't just click my fingers and change it. So it's been a really big one. And I think it's, I've had a lot of messages from people, fans of the show, and people who follow me on social media and stuff, who talk about how D&D has been a huge help for them as well. Like, playing female characters or playing male characters or playing non-binary characters has been a huge help in them kind of coming to understand themselves, or to, identify themselves, or sort of just explore the concept as well. Like, even if it's not something they stick with, it's something that they can, explore and try out.
I think it comes down to, again, a question of safety.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about genre at all, but
Mm.
I've been doing a lot more horror storytelling as of late.
Mm.
Um, and the most important component, I mean, obviously safety and consent are always important at the table,
Of
always.
course.
But
Absolutely.
most important in horror, because it's
Yeah.
like the we all understand that we're going to let our guard down enough expressly for you to get to me. Like, I mean, we've shown up, you know what I mean, to
We
be
know what this game is. We are
exactly.
showing up to play a horror game. Yeah.
Exactly. But you have to feel safe enough. Like I'm terrible in haunted houses and things like that.
Same.
Because
Big same.
but I was a bodyguard for so long. I go into defense. Like I'm under attack. You know what I
You
mean?
want to fight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And they jump out and stuff and you know what I mean? It's never they got me. You know what I mean? Hang, back up, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't let that down enough to experience that. And so I think when you get into these characters and you put on
Mm.
this mask and you are this other person in this other place, you almost give yourself permission to feel these different things that you felt all along, but again, you laughed off.
Just a joke.
Yeah, it's just a joke. Just a thing. I just
Funny. It's a funny thing.
yeah, I kind of look like her, whatever, you know what I mean? And then you start like real human emotions start to show up there. And,
Mhm.
and I think that's the real power of this medium. Now, spoiler alert, dear viewer, we actually recorded this right before I talked to Dr. Scarlet, which you would have seen last week. This is us from the past. Hello. So,
Hello.
from the
What?
past, that's I'm gonna ask Dr. Scarlet about this, but I mean, it really, this is why the therapeutic aspects of TTRPGs work, because
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm hurt. I'm saying my elven paladin is hurt, you know, and maybe my
Is
elven
upset by
paladin,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe my elven paladin, felt abandoned by their parents or something, or maybe my elven paladin has some very complex feelings for the orc rogue. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And you
For
can,
sure.
when you can step one foot out of that, even, it just makes it
Yeah.
so much easier to admit the truth to yourself,
100%.
Yeah.
And and when you're playing with people, I play with close friends now, like in High Rollers and Knights of Moon stuff. I play with close friends that I trust, and looking back, when you're a teenager, you can't let your guard down. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, even though they were like my best friends and like we were all really close, you still were like, well, I can't. You're still shy, even subconsciously. Like,
Right.
I didn't even realize I was doing it. Whereas now with my adult friends, like, they've been so supportive of, like, when I would do the Halloween stuff, they would, like, my friend Kim and Katie Ree would just be like, you look amazing. Oh my God, I can't believe it. And like, that immediately is like, oh, this is okay. Like, I kind of feel safe. And then for me, especially as a creator with a following, it's like when my audience is there saying like, this is amazing. I can't believe you've done this. This is a brilliant, that makes you feel it. But that playing group at the table, when they're supportive of, like, and they're just like, yep, you are this character now. I'm going to treat you as that character and I'm going to respond to you as that character. It's such a relief. It's such a weight off the chest that does allow that moment of vulnerability.
And the first thing I saw was your Jester cosplay. And so
Yeah.
you posted that one day and I was like, oh, word? Okay.
Like,
Go ahead on, Mark.
Man, like Laura responding to that and just like being super like sort of, you're so cute, I love it. I was just like, oh my God, I can't imagine anything more sort of complimentary. But yeah, like, it's also fun. Like, it's also something that I've realized, like, regardless of like the actual gender identity stuff, it's also just fun. And it should be something I can just do for a bit of fun. Like, that's totally fine too. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Speaking of an interesting journey, believe it or not, we're about out of time. That's how fast it goes.
Oh, goodness me, it doesn't just fly by.
That's how fast it goes. So I'm gonna give you, last thought to leave the people with, and where they can find you, good sir.
Goodness me. Listen, just, I've a couple of things I've mentioned in this. Like, if there's ever something in your D&D game, just talk to your DM about it. Like, trust me, as a DM, I would much rather have a player come to me and say, hey, I'm not having fun, or hey, I'd love it if we could do this. I really want to explore this thing. Like, there is no better feeling than when a player comes to you with plans, or is like, hey, I'd like to do this, or like, I didn't enjoy this, can we change this, and stuff like that. It's really useful. Please don't be afraid to do it. In terms of where you can find me, Sherlock_Hulmes or Sherlock Hulmes, pretty much everywhere is my online handle. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all of that good stuff. Twitch as well. I do some of my own bits and pieces. But most importantly, High Rollers D&D is literally my baby. It is the show I've built up so much. I'm so proud of it. I want more people to check it out. Come and check out High Rollers D&D. We are finishing up our big epic campaign, but in 2022, in our brand new studio that we just got, we're going to be going back to playing in person. We've got our own studio space. We're going to be decorating it. We'll hopefully be starting our brand new third campaign in 2022. So at least come and join us for that. But if not, come and watch our current stuff too.
I'm going to say two things. If you need to get me in as a guest, or do it while we're still heads in boxes. But I'll come to England. I'm about to be there for D&D in a castle anyway.
I might just see you at the D&D in a castle.
Maybe. The other thing I would say before we wrap this up is, to your point about checking in with the DM. If your players check in with you, don't take it personally. They're not pooping on you or their story. They're trying to it's a collaborative art. It's meant for everyone to enjoy. So, thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all from the recent past of having watched this. Again, we made a big announcement on Tuesday that you should have heard by now. I'm not going to say it on the off chance it doesn't happen, and then I messed it all up. So things get wibbly wobbly, timey wimey real quick. But you guys have fun, play some games. We will be back next week with Mr. Matthew Mercer is our guest next week.
Oh, my boy.
It is. Yes. It's our boy. Our boy.
Yeah,
we have shared custody of Mercer. Yeah. So we're going to get down in it. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Mark. And we will see you all next time. All right. Bye.